Make Better Wealth Decisions, a podcast that explores how financial advisors' blind spots can harm your investments. I'm your host, John DeGuy, a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. In this podcast, we'll provide advice on how you can achieve better outcomes by maximizing investments and minimizing taxes. Let's put our thinking caps on as we consciously decide to get smarter about our money. This week on Make Better Wealth Decisions, we're speaking with an entrepreneur, Chris Schlierman from California, who grew up in poverty, but who has actually found ways to seek peace and make more decisions based on a centered point of where am I coming from? What do I need to know? Asking the right people, meeting the right people, and then working and finding ways to make things better in life, making better wealth decisions by working with other people who can be helpful and to be entrepreneurial. This week on Make Better Wealth Decisions, we're speaking with Christopher Schlierman. He is a sought-after consultant who was born and raised in Santa Monica, California. He was raised Mormon and grew up poor in government-subsidized housing. But since then, he has built multiple businesses across multiple industries. He knows how to utilize money efficiently and how to use it with scale. Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show, John.
Let's begin by having you tell us your life story, because it's not exactly a common one. And I would say that you're sort of like a next level person when it comes to making financial decisions with regard to your personal wealth. What's your journey taking you from where you grew up and how you grew up and where you are now?
Oh, that's loaded. I've made money and lost money. I mean, my childhood I grew up in Santa Monica, California, like we talked about. That was a extremely wealthy neighborhood, but I did not understand how wealthy the neighborhood was when I was growing up. Grew up in a bit of a bubble, believing that Santa Monica was just normal suburbia. Like so many other stupid kids, I just sort of thought that was normal. But I was living in government subsidized housing, though, like reduced rent housing. Did not really truly understand what that was like. But when I was growing up, I used to get assistance from my church just to even be able to pay rent and get food at home, and did not really understand what that meant. It was just became normal for me. And then as I started to get a little older in my teenage years, we moved out of the government housing and we got to normal pay your own rent type housing. My dad started making a little bit more money, but we were still stuck. We couldn't pay rent some months. We had to get church assistance and couldn't afford food months. So we'd still get church assistance there. And when I was about a teenager, it's when it started to really hit me, because I would get invited to go places with my friends. I could not afford or pay for anything that they were getting. I didn't have a cell phone, didn't get a car, couldn't afford to even get a driver's license. That was the first moment where I started to wake up and realize, okay, I don't really have money. I don't really have means to do stuff. And I started to get to my 18, 19 years. And that's when I started to really realize how poor we were, because I started hearing my mom talk about not being able to even pay for gas in the car. And so that's when it really started to hit me. I went and started my professional career at that time, working at a business out down there in Venice Beach, and was asked to contribute to family finances. And that was huge. That was a big moment for me, big wake up call for me growing up, was being asked to contribute, and honestly started realizing how much the money I was putting in was in a huge way paying my family's rent at about 19 years old. And that was pivotal for me to have a wake up call about, shoot, I got to do something in my life to get out of this hamster wheel that we're in, this never ending cycle we're in of not having money, not having good financial management. So then I went about my career at that point, stayed at that business. I was out in Venice Beach for about 3 years, moved to Utah, started my first business, lived in Utah for about 6-ish years, started a few companies, did some consulting, and absolutely worked my butt off to make money. Tried to do it. Learned some lessons though on how to do it the smart way, because I was very grateful for this, but I had a boss at that first company I worked at, and I had a couple of people from my church that were very good with how to use money. And they took me under their wing when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, and they gave me some advice on business and money that I used some of it, and some of it took me about 10 years to really understand what they were saying. But full circle years later, I have started really using everything that and I was very grateful for that.
Sounds to me like you've had some mentors and maybe even some angels who have come along and helped you in your own journey to being what you are now.
100%. I mean, I'd say this is I didn't really appreciate growing up in Santa Monica, didn't really understand what it
Right.
was like, but you know what? God needed me to be there. And the reasons why he needed me to be there was because he needed me to learn the language of business, learn the language of money, learn the language of Hollywood. But at the same time, he needed me to meet certain people and get access to people that I would not have met if I grew up in Utah or Colorado or Arizona or which I'll never a regular suburbia state. I grew up in a spot where I had, being a member of the church out in Santa Monica, there was some like big shot business folk that were in my ward that I got to see every Sunday and would have had direct access to go up to them and talk to them. That you just don't normally get that kind of access. And one of them ran Prudential, one of them was like a big architect, ran a big successful architecture firm. So I had access to some dudes, and I would ask them, had the foresight to start asking them questions on life. It helped me as I went on in my journey. So then fast forward in Utah, and I'm building some businesses, starting to make some money. Also learning the challenges of how to actually manage money as soon as you get it, right? And made some key mistakes where I made investments that were not liquid or like cash flowing assets, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was investing in private companies that did cash flow as opposed to investing in things that were cash flowing assets. Put me in some tricky spots, and also got caught up with the whole keeping up with the Joneses program, trying to live bigger means, put me into another financial reset. And that was the moment when took a big hard look back at myself, and some of those wisdom nuggets that had been ingrained in me at like 18 years old started to really become front of mind, because it was this is exactly what they were referencing would happen,
Right.
right? That like this exact moment. And then that's when I've got to a spot now where it's a completely different change of approach. And now I'm in a spot where it's making money in a safe way, smart way, and utilize allocating resources the right way. And even when I advise companies, I do the same thing. And a little key takeaway I would give to people is the secret to managing money the correct way actually starts with yourself, like in the internal battle. Win the internal battle with your own self. Instead of operating from a space of analog brain stress, fear, anxiety, and your lower energy centers of your body control who you are, change the way you breathe, slow down your body, open up the vagus nerve, do mindfulness, do breath, do yoga, do grounding, do these principles, do whatever you need to do to slow your brain down, allow yourself to operate from peace. Being able to manage money at that point becomes a million times easier.
Okay, let's see if we can get into a few specifics because your consulting work, as we talked about off the top, has you working in a number of different fields with some disparate clients. So
Mhm.
maybe we can talk. Maybe if you could just give me, let's start with professional athletes. You have some professional athletes as clients.
Mhm.
What advice do you give them that might be different from the advice that you would give to someone who was not a professional athlete?
Yeah, so I had a handful of professional athlete clients. Some of them now I still stay touch with business. I had one professional athlete client was an NBA player for about 10 years, and he was living in Vegas, and he was spending about 100 grand every single time he went to the club, completely just blowing money. Right. And so, a little bit of advice I give to a guy like him is I'd always remind him, you're at your pinnacle of access and cash when you're playing in the NBA. So when you're playing in the NBA right now, make sure you truly utilize the opportunities that you're getting to secure portfolio and secure relationships. Because as soon as you leave the MBA, the access is going to dry up. Cash flow is going to dry up. So this is your time where instead of looking at the MBA as like this is you've made it moment. This is your no. This is your setting yourself up for life moment, right? So, and a bit of advice I'd give someone. I had one client who actually did this. He didn't even need my advice. He did this on his own. Was he recognized that when he was playing in the NBA, he could get a loan at any bank that was far, far bigger and far superior than anything he could normally get off the revenue he was making, because you can get those types of loans when you're playing in the NBA because they just want to do business with you. What I mean by that is like you can get loans that are double, triple your income because they're willing to lend you to you like that. So he actually got a loan like that and had a game plan beforehand of where he was going to actually put the money. It wasn't just personal money. He was going to use that to jumpstart a real estate business. So my little advice to athletes is recognize the position you're in and say, hey, how are you going to utilize this access that you're being given to jumpstart a business that will go long past your playing career?
Right. Let's see if we can talk about
Money.
something. Can we talk about investing in unicorns as a second thing? I think I've already got a good enough background with regard to the athletes. Let's talk about unicorns. You've done some of that.
Yeah. So I'm an investor in Olipop, which is a pretty successful drink company. I've done those types of deals. What specific do you want to know about it?
So because I have so little experience with unicorns, I'm wondering if you could give me a general idea of maybe what you think about and what gives you the confidence to back up the wheelbarrow and put a significant amount of money into a company that is likely to be either a home run or a strikeout, and there's not a whole lot in between.
So yeah, and that's a great question. So little advice that I would give that I've learned along the way from the school of hard knocks is, first off, don't invest capital into anything unless you actually have the capital to support investing. So that's number one. Get a real good look at your own personal finances to invest. Then look at the team that you're investing in. That's got to be number two. You got to actually look at the team of who's presenting it to you. So, like the deal with Olipop, that was a no brainer for me because the team that was presenting it to me, it was a syndicated like angel deal. And the team that was presenting it had a proven track record of adding mega value to D2C brands like Olipop in marketing and wholesaling, right? Directly to stores like Walmart. So that was a thing where it's like, I'm securitized just purely because I don't even have to know the founders of Olipop. I know these guys and I know these dudes are in on the deal and they're doing what they're doing, then it's good, right? It's going to be a proven home run. Likewise, I've also made the mistake of investing in a business that I thought could maybe be a unicorn and it wasn't. And the founder had no background truly in the space that the business field that he was running and asking for capital in. So I think you just really need to get to know the team. The team is everything. Anybody can put together some fancy pitch deck that shows the kind of growth that they're going to have and who their partners are going to be and whatever. None of that matters. Get to know the actual team itself and understand, really test their mindset. What kind of mindset do they have? Do they have an abundance mindset? Do they have a collaborate with others mindset? Do they like test their mindset and then test their background? Don't test the background necessarily as regards to like, oh, they have a proven track record of being an executive at some big hotshot company. No, instead look at the background saying, hey, you're coming to me saying, hey, you founder of a AI company. All right. Well, have you ever built an AI company before? Right? Just very direct. Have you ever built an AI before? You have anyone in your team that's ever built an AI company before? Like direct or correspondence to the resume.
We've now talked about getting into things and giving advice to unicorns and athletes. What about getting out? What advice would you have to people when the time comes to monetize or cut your losses or just This has been great. But I'm going to move on because I've got a different opportunity or because we've got a great opportunity to make a boatload of money. And thank you very much. We're going to be on our way. But what advice do you have to give to people with regard to exit?
Well, so again, if you invest in a privately held business, like if you're investing in a unicorn or something like that, exiting is only going to happen if the company sells, the company goes public, or you find someone who's willing to take your shares on the private, like secondary market. And you're going to end up having to sell it for way less than it's worth in the secondary market. People will smell the desperation and they'll try to take advantage. So that's where I say, again, make sure you know what you're investing into, right? If you're investing in something that's cash flowing, or look back and look at your situation. Like if you're in a situation where you can realistically just take a step back, you don't have to operate the company anymore. They're okay with you not operating it, where you've done your part and you can take some sort of a cash flow. Well, then that's an exit of sorts as well. It's an exit of your time, right? You just have to look at your situation, what you're doing, and feel like what's best for you.
What advice would you give just in general to entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, people who are maybe considering going down the entrepreneurial path, much like you have?
Well, I mean, if you're thinking about if you want to be an entrepreneur or not, then you already know you're not an entrepreneur.
Good.
Like it's not exactly something you have to think about. Something that you
It's in your blood. You know it. You don't have to think about it when you get up in the morning. It's just there. And you just want to do it.
exactly like it's just there. If you want to, being an investor is a completely different thing. I think everybody should be an investor, regardless of the industry you're in or what you do for a living. Everyone should be investing because everyone needs to get a return on their time.
Okay, so let's see if we can turn this on its head a little bit then. Instead of saying, what advice do you give to entrepreneurs? Let's say the person's already an entrepreneur and they're working their tail off, and for whatever reason, they haven't broken through yet. What advice would you give to someone who's got their head on straight and working really hard and doing hopefully all the right things, but for whatever reason, things haven't worked out yet? Then what?
Okay, so you're an entrepreneur, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and it's not working out.
Let's say you're paying the bills, but you're not going hockey stick the way you thought you would and the way your business plan said you should.
Take a big step back at that point and analyze whether or not your business plan was realistic. Take a big step back and look at your industry to see how your industry is moving and grooving. And take a big step back and recognize who are your current partners in management that you have at your business.
Okay.
If you those three, you'll see the answer will come very clear.
Now you've got a podcast of your own, do you not?
I do.
Yeah, and you've had celebrity athletes, Trevor Brooker, Bronson Calfusi. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Will Cole, and you've been featured on Silicon Slopes and Travis Brady's Next Gen Summits. Tell me a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, my show is called the Consciously Connected Podcast. I film it with my business partner, Danny Perkins. We have had lots of cool people come on the show. We've had recently, we just filmed an episode with Dr. John Delaney, Dave Ramsey's business partner. That was very fun. I also interview just everyday business owners, Lynn Smith and Jordan Nielsen here in Phoenix, Arizona, just small business owners. So we've got people from all different walks of life. And yeah, you can check that show out on Spotify.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's see if we can wrap this up. This has been really neat, Chris. You're not the typical guest that I have on this podcast, but it's been really refreshing because I enjoy your perspective and you've got me thinking about things that are maybe a bit beyond the purview of traditional behavioral finance and behavioral economics and personal finance. What advice would you give to people to help them make better wealth decisions?
Well, number one, have some grace. Give yourself a lot of grace. You don't Egypt didn't get all of their pyramids built in a day. Rome didn't get built in a day. Life is a never ending, roller coaster, right? So have grace, recognize life is on a spectrum, and start with going inward. Like I've said before, just go inward, work on fixing yourself and who you are and aligning yourself. rest of life becomes a lot more clear and easy at that point. Don't analog your way through life. Let's connect to source and allow yourself to be an attractor to opportunity. And managing wealth becomes a lot easier when you are not operating from anxiety.
That's wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Chris. It's been really great. I want to wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you. You as well.
John DeGooey is a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. The views expressed in this program are not to be construed as specific advice. It is recommended that you consult a qualified advisor before taking action. His books, The Professional Financial Advisor 4, Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry, and Bullshift are available through Amazon and in bookstores throughout Canada. You can reach John at 647-STAND-UP. That's 647-782-6387 or at jdegooey@designedsecurities.ca.